All right, good evening and welcome to the Neary Building Committee meeting. It is Monday, September 16th, 2024, and it's 7:34 p.m. I think we have 6 of our 7 voting members, if I'm doing my math right here. First order of business is we are going to skip the meeting minutes because there are no new minutes available for this evening's meeting. We will go right to Item 4, Neary site conditions, continued discussions from prior meetings. Mark, you had asked for this agenda topic to come back on at our large meeting where we were in person. So I just wanted to make sure I respected that you asked for this to come back in and added it to the agenda and made it broad enough because I have no idea what you wanted to raise, but the floor is yours. And obviously, to the extent that we need to add it to a future agenda, we will, based on wherever this goes. So, all yours.
Well, I'll make it quick, to be all honest. I'm not sure what I was intending to say. I think I'll have some comments later on some of the future items, but I'm content at this point.
Okay. Anyone else on site while we're on it? Okay. Next is going to be MSBA funding allowance update. So, Jim and Katie, you both have the floor. Kathy, I see your hands up.
I was trying to get to it, Jason. Can we go back to the, so where are we with the results of the soil tests that we did?
Arrow Street?
Yeah, so our consultant did go out. They told us that it would take them 2 to 3 weeks to create the report. I see that I have the report in my email, but I have not had a chance to review it. So not ready to speak to the results of it per se. But we'll have some commentary out to you very soon.
Okay.
Anything else in sight? Okay. MSBA funding allowance update. Who's going to take that one?
Yep, I'll take that. Share my screen here. So some good news out of the MSBA. They increased both their cost per square foot allowance and site allowance. So this was at their August board meeting. So the previous cost per square foot allowance was $550. They upped that to $586. Site, they upped from $55 a square foot to $59. So the estimated share, I'll sound like a broken record, that's just our current estimate as of today, is a town share of 83.4 million. With this increase in the allowances, that comes down to 81.8 for a delta of 1.6. So lots of moving pieces and parts in this calculation for the town share, but some good news from MSBA.
Kathy, have you and up your hands up? I was going to ask if you, and I know you had a meeting last week. I haven't watched it, but where's the finance subcommittee at on this, and or any next steps?
So what we have asked Jim to do is to go back and check the numbers because the 1.6 million just seems low. We've got 100,000 square foot building. I know not all of the costs are reimbursable, but forget the modulars. That's not square footage. So if you just take 100,000 square feet times $36, that's $3.6 million. So with this number, it implies that less than half of the construction is reimbursable, which is not true. So Jim is going to go back and scrub the 3011, right, Jim, and make sure that the $1.6 million is the right delta, because it really looks like it should be a bigger number to me, just doing the math like I just did it. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. But I,
Yeah, well, yeah, I think Kathy, if you can set some time, me and you can look at the 3011 together.
fine.
I
That's
did go
fine.
back and scrub the numbers and everything is in correctly, so is in the spreadsheet correctly. So yeah, we can spend a little bit of time. I don't know whether it's the full finance subcommittee or we can walk through it together to see how it's calculating.
Well, why don't you send me the revised 3011
Okay.
first, and just let me look at it, and then we can have a coherent conversation. Okay, good enough.
Makes sense.
Good enough for the moment. It's going the right way for sure.
Yep.
Any questions from the committee on that? All right, next item, schematic design process, next steps and schedule.
So obviously, we're jumping into a new module. We're module 4, schematic design. The PSR is submitted, is under review. We've obviously received some comments back. So we just want to walk through what the submittal is going to be, and what the timeline is going forward. The same thing we did with the PSR. So folks just understand the finish line. So as we walk through some of these things, there's a good understanding of where we're heading. So we have September 25th, we have the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee. That's a subcommittee of the overall Board of Directors for the MSBA. They review our preferred option and overall project in a bit more detail. And then on the October 30th MSBA Board of Directors meeting, that's when we get formal approval to proceed into schematic design. So once that is complete, from November to February, we are going to be working on the schematic design. This is obviously heavy into Arrow Street scope of the design work, more detailed design, and a few other items that we're going to touch on. So that's November to February. This gets submitted same way as our other submittals to the MSBA. And then the MSBA formally approves your schematic design. And then after that point, once the Board of Directors approves our schematic design submittal, we have 121 calendar days for town's approval of the project scope and budget. So that will be the town vote. So that's the timing going forward. Any questions? Oh, Kathy.
Sorry. So Jim, on the April 2025 date, where the MSBA approves the scope and budget agreement, right? We agree with it. So at that point, we have an agreement that basically says this is what the grant is that we have agreed to give you, so that we have that number before town meeting or not?
Yes.
Big
Yep.
enough.
We will have, yeah, we will have that number, and we will have an estimated maximum total facilities grant. So yeah, in other words, we'll be able to understand what the town share is.
Okay, so that's it, unless we've got change orders, whatever. So that at the town meeting, even though we have to approve the total gross cost of the project, we can still say this is going to be the state's share of it.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
we tell the audience that, okay.
Yeah, and the last bite at the apple that the MSBA has is at the closeout of the project for the audit. So that'd be the only caveat I would put on it, that ultimately they'll give us a maximum facilities grant, but that number will, just as you said, change orders, a lot of things along the way. The final audit really is what the final town share is, but it'll be close. So
The final audit could actually lower it if they disagreed with something that we did?
yeah, they could. So for an example, if we have a ton of site changes, unforeseen site conditions, or some change orders that are deemed non-reimbursable, that would bring that grant down, because they're not participating in those change orders. They basically assume a certain percentage will be reimbursable. So that could move the needle somewhat.
Okay, but not to belabor this, in April, there's nothing wrong with us saying to town meeting, this is the agreement we have signed with the MSBA, and this is the grant they have agreed to give us.
Nothing wrong with that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. No more caveats from me on that, but at that point.
So Jim, on that point, let's just say we had $1 million contingency for out of scope on the project. I know that number's out of thin air, just for illustrative purposes. Is the agreement with the MSBA assume zero reimbursement on that contingency out of scope because they don't know what it is, so that anything that is allowable as part of that would be kind of additional potential? Is that how it works?
What they have an assumed value. I don't have the percentage right in front of me. So a percentage of that 1 million in that maximum total facilities grant, they're assuming will be reimbursable. So that number can shift. So they do make an assumption that some of the change orders will be reimbursable. It's a small percentage.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're taking questions on the slide now, right? Because that's
Yep.
all right. So absent any views to the contrary here tonight, I would like to recommend that myself as chair of this committee, Kathy as chair of the select board, Mark, the town clerk, and Greg as superintendent of schools, and the moderator actually start discussing logistics for how we would do a town meeting vote. So my question to the Skanska team is that April 23rd date. I know you have tentative right below the April 23rd date, but is that a pretty good date, an excellent date? Like, I get things can happen, they can punt us to a future agenda, but like, is it too early for us to start thinking about logistics given the size of this town meeting and a date?
Definitely not. I think the MSBA board meeting, unless we have some huge issue in schematic design as we're going through it, but we would know that in advance. So I would say the April 23rd board date is firm. And I would definitely encourage just what you're saying to start to coordinate this so we are ready after that board date.
Okay, because I want to have that discussion sooner rather than later, because we'll be beyond the April school vacation at that point, which means we'll be competing with spring sports. And I think whether it's surveying or whatever that group decides needs to be done, yeah, I'd like to get ahead of that. So, Kathy, I see your hand went up on that.
Yeah, so just to be clear, Jim, where did you get the April 26th date?
So I believe those were from some previous discussions. We're just assuming pretty much as quickly as possible after the board meeting that would be when we would have to do the vote. That's basically the earliest date. If that has to shift by a day, or we basically have 120 calendar days. So if depending on the timing that works best for the town, that date can be adjusted. So that was basically an assumed date. I think there was some reasoning to it, but if that has to shift around, that can shift around without issue.
So I know you've done this with other towns, you know how this works. You don't call a town meeting, overnight, right? You got to plan ahead of time. So therefore, it would be prudent to understand when that MSBA board date is as soon as we can, whatever time they get set. If the 23rd is a realistic date, you've actually looked at the calendar.
Sorry, Kathy, I thought you were talking about the April 26th for the.
Well, I am, because we can't, if MSBA votes on April 23rd, we can't then decide to call a town meeting in 3 days after that. The town meeting's set.
So we have the 2025 board meeting dates. The MSBA posts those. So the 23rd is a hard date.
It's a real date. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly. Sorry.
So sorry, I just need to make one correction. So I just checked when it's actually April 30th right now. So when we put together, I just double checked MSBA website. So I apologize. I was working off with MSBA when we originally did this. So I'm going to change that to April 30th.
Which means April 26th is not the date we're considering.
Right. I think when we put this together, we're just assuming so that the date, so we were pulling off from what normally the Southborough has their date, so I should put down tentative also.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
mean, that's not a normal Southborough date, so that's somewhat embarrassing, but we'll figure it out. Our town meeting's in March, and our election's the second Tuesday in May. So it shortens our window by a week. I get we don't make the MSBA calendar, but
Okay, so just to reiterate, Jason, that 13th of May is when we have the town election, right? Where we've got to get the debt exclusion approved. So Jason, on the special town meeting on September 30th that we're about to have, one of the articles is to change the date of the annual town meeting to add more flexibility. It says that we can set it anytime up to the last Saturday in April. And that's the annual town meeting. You can do a special town meeting anytime you want to, as long as you follow the rules to do it. So we should definitely talk about how to do the annual town meeting in relation to this. So we don't have 2 town meetings back to back for sure. We got school vacation week. So we definitely have some planning to do here to make this all work and get plenty of people there for the special for this.
we do. All right, so Roger, then Denise.
So following up on what Kathy just said and beyond. So Kathy, you said that we can schedule the annual town meeting anytime up until the last day in April, correct?
If the article passes on September 30th, so if,
Well.
so
all
hopefully
right.
everybody here will vote for it that goes.
But MSB board approval isn't going to occur until, I'm doing this through the chair, if it's all right, Jason. MSB board approval won't occur until the 30th, right?
Yep.
So are we thinking that we would possibly do this on the same day? as
No.
MSB?
No.
Okay, fine.
No,
So-
I think you should put some
I-
time between the two. So it may be
Yeah.
that we do the March one because I don't think you want to do 2 back to back. You got to give people a break. You got school vacation week in there. So my guess is we'll set the annual, maybe again, it could be maybe the first Monday in April, or it could be the last Saturday in April. So it doesn't have to be on a Saturday anymore. It can just be any day as long as it occurs before the last Saturday in April. So,
Okay, so
but we got to vote on it. So we're trying to give flexibility. And this was one of the things that we were thinking about. We want as much flexibility for the next year's annual town meeting to make sure it works as well as possible with the special.
understood. So as I understand it, one of the things you can do within the 121 days? I guess that's what it is. So we will have that. So there'll be a date 121 days beyond April 30th, beyond that MSBA board approval date. That potentially would let us have another meeting after the special meeting that we have to approve the bond in case it fails.
Yes.
And we need to at least try to get another bite of the apple. Am I accurate in that?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
And on top of that, Roger, we could still go ahead and have the town election the second Tuesday in May, and that's only a majority vote. So say that passes, that still stands. And that's not approving the budget, that's approving the debt exclusion.
understood.
So you do that and still have another bite of the apple as far as town meeting to try to get the
For the
2/3 to
two-thirds.
actually approve the project, yeah.
Yeah, you can go out of order.
All right, my hand is already down then. Thank you.
Denise? You're on mute.
That was also my question as to taking it out of order because you've got the ballot question. So we can take it out of order. That was my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds to me like we're looking at 2 things in May.
Mhm.
I
Okay,
have
thank
to-
you.
Guess at this point. Andrew?
How does the timing affect with the 4th grade being 30 months in terms of the school year? Like, are we going to miss a whole school year if we don't get it, kind of approved in the April, May timeframe, or are we already looking at kind of missing the school year because it's 30 months versus 24.
Jim, you want to take that?
So, yeah, so I mean, we go into detailed design. At that point, basically we would bring the CM on board or whatever we go forward with. And then, you know, I think it would be, we want to have shovels in ground until 2026. So yeah, I think we would have, I don't think if it were to fail, then it pushes that off because it's all based on Arrow Street's design time schedule.
Yeah, I think it just would be good for the vote to know, okay, the idea is that this would be for the, you know, school for use of the incoming, second graders in 2028, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and our master schedule spells that all out for right now. So we can go into more detail on that.
And keep in mind, once we get to that discussion, while it's ideal to start the school year in the school, there have been many neighboring communities that have moved. That will be a decision that the superintendent and his team can think about, right? So if you had a school that was ready in October as opposed to September, it's up to the school when they move into it based on certificate of occupancy and all the logistics that they have to think about. All right, Jim, do you have anything beyond this slide?
So yeah, I was just going to jump into the submission itself for this schematic design. Okay, so our SD submittal has four main parts. We're going to have the DESI submittal, the schematic design report, and then the schematic design specifications, project manual, and drawings. So this comes straight out of module 4. So I'm not going to read everything, but just to give everybody a taste of what will be in this. This DESI piece is definitely going to be a big pull for the administration and the school. So this basically just spells out everything. DESI reviews the drawings, reviews the special, it definitely dives into the special education piece of it, and education plans, floor plans, and basically adjacencies. And they will come back with comments, and we have to respond to those comments or adjust. So Larry, Katie, anything else to add on the DESI piece?
Covered it.
Covered it? Okay. All right, and just stop me if there's any questions on specific pieces. The bulk of the report is this schematic design report, obviously. Overall introduction. So this is the final design program. We've been working in a preliminary design program. So this is what the building will be, and spells that all out. Obviously, space summaries. This is a big piece of it, the security and visual access that needs to be very detailed and spelled out, and MSBA will come back with comments on this. So this piece, the state site permits, so that's DOT, DEP, Concom, the site vulnerability, environmental, and existing building assessment, then geotech, and then some basically code analysis as well. So all of this is, a lot of what we're going to have to do to further understand the site, and what permitting pieces are going to be required. So this is a very important piece of the submittal. And then Larry, Katie, for these pieces, our massing studies, just basically the overall building systems, our sustainability pieces, and then what the rooms themselves are going to look like. So this piece, and I'll give a preview, our plan is for the next building committee meeting to have this discussion of CM at risk first design bid build. So that also has to be in the schematic design. That decision has to be made as to what delivery method we will go with. And again, in a follow-on meeting, we'll go into that in a lot more detail, what the differences are between those two delivery methods. We also have to get approval from the IG's office if we are going the CM at risk route, and that is a 60-day review. So we're going to have to build that into the schedule as well. So as you know, Kathy and I spoke about, you will have your anticipated reimbursement rate, your MSBA 3011. The MSBA 3011, that's what the project scope and budget will be based on. And then the biggest, another big piece of this submission is for the PDP and PSR, we only had one estimator. For this estimate, we will have Scan School do an estimate, and PM&C, Aero Street's estimator, will both do independent estimates. Bring those two estimates together and reconcile them if there's any deltas between the two. So what gets brought forth and gets brought forth as the budget will be a fully reconciled estimate based on two independent estimates. And then just an overall updated project work plan and schedule, obviously, for going forward. After the submittal, the project scope and budget conference, that's where we go into finalizing what Kathy and I were speaking about earlier, and then ultimately the board meeting for approval. So went through a lot there. Questions, comments?
Andrew, is your hand still up from the last go around? I'm gonna assume yes and go to Kathy.
He's muted too. Okay, so mine is not up. So sorry to do this to you, Jim. Can you back up to the timetable slide? There you go. Okay, so I thought that when the working group met on Thursday, we had sort of agreed that we didn't want to wait till November to start the schematic, that we wanted to start it either now or once the meeting on September 25th took place.
Yeah, I think that was the understanding amongst the group. So this is just the formal schedule. Obviously, when we jump into the schedule outlook for the next couple of months. But yeah, I think that was definitely the marching orders. This is the formal start of schematic design. Per the direction of the working group in that discussion, Aero Street understands that, you know, we want to get this going earlier than that. So again, these are just the formal dates of when schematic design starts in the eyes of the MSBA, but I think that's understood.
All right, but now the working group does not give you marching orders.
Yes.
Just to be clear to the other group, we're not giving marching orders, but it was discussed. Okay, now, just to be clear again, the next time we're going to see a formal estimate and we're going to have the reconciliation of the two is going to be when schematic is done, not any time before. There's no sneak peek, there's no any adjustments. There really is no other chance to see a revised estimate until then. Is that a correct statement or not?
That is a correct statement, because that's the time it takes for Aero Street to develop the estimating documents. So that's the project manual and the drawings.
So Katie and Larry, you know, Thursday we talked about how important the cost is on this project to the people that are going to vote, we believe. And we think it's also important that we show a story about how this cost has come down, and how we have striven mightily to get the cost down. So Katie and Larry, as you develop a schematic, are you going to say anything about anything that you might see that is going to save some money, so we at least have an idea? We've got some money that's going to get saved by the time we do this third estimate.
Yeah, I guess, so let's see. We will try to keep you apprised of where things are going above and beyond or below where we expect. So if we're seeing something that seems a little trending higher than our current estimate, then we would let you know about that. And if we see something in the reverse that it's coming down, we'll let you know about that.
Like
I
the
think to-
soil work, once you get the testing done, and I know you're not gonna be digging yet, so maybe you really can't change that because there's still too much risk. And I think Mark Davis thinks that's the case. But anything that changes, one way or the other, including whether the geothermal system is gonna be part of this, remember that geothermal is not part of that $81 million number. So that's got to get decided at some point, I would think relatively soon. So I'm just trying to find a way to keep track of what's going on budget-wise for the next few months and not have to wait until March to get the new number. And it may not be possible. So
Okay.
That I would say, I mean, I think if we can just make sure that when we get to schematic design, that the marching orders are to look for opportunities to find cost savings. So as different estimators, different engineers, different people are looking at it, I think that should be in the forefront of everybody's thoughts.
Yeah, and I think, as I've said in the past, that's, the charge for the MSBA for us is, cost efficient, educationally appropriate, facility. So that's, I think that's loud and clear to the project team.
And somewhat, I guess, related to what Andrew and Kathy just said is, I realize none of you might be the right person to answer this, but have we seen, when have districts started exploring, based on their design, access to the federal tax credits, whether it be the IRA credits, et cetera? Because those could be meaningful dollar amounts that may sway a decision one way or another, geothermal being an example.
Sure, yeah. We are currently working on a couple projects where we're trying to project those. I believe that happens as a reimbursement, but I'd want to check that for you. So you're basically spending the money and getting the money back. And the biggest risk that most folks are concerned about is the upcoming election in November, and we should be well past that as we start to round the corner on schematics and understand where the politics in Congress may be changing one way or the other, whether that continues to hold or whether that takes a different direction.
But is that something either your teams can assist with, or is that something we need some combination of Becky and Brian looking at?
We'll certainly do a first pass at it, and it wouldn't hurt to have their assistance as well.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a third party. I'm not expecting them to become tax experts overnight, but
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
Since we came back to the schedule, the thing that is running through my mind, and I understand we can take stuff out of order. I don't think that it's the best way, because I'm concerned that if we have an election, people will say, oh, well, I voted for or against that at the ballot, so I don't have to do anything else. It's already been decided. Then on the other hand, there are those that are going to say, I don't really know what I'm exactly voting on without the town meeting to explain exactly what the position is, what we're spending. I mean, I know that we may have to do this, but I'm really concerned about taking it out of order, because I think the town meeting, you can then explain to everybody that you have to go to the ballot box, you have to go to this town election, and you have to vote after the fact on the borrowing. I just think it's going to be very difficult, and I'm afraid we'll shoot ourselves in the foot if we don't do this in the right order. That's just my
Yeah,
opinion.
so
we're not planning on doing that. We're just trying to say we'd have a second bite of the apple if it fails. So town meeting comes first, that's the plan, then the ballot. And then if the town meeting fails, then we could still do another town meeting and still vote. But we're absolutely intending to do the town meeting vote first.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood, because we were talking about it taking it out of order, and I really think I feel strongly that it should be that way. So
You could
thanks.
have two elections too if you had to. So you could call a special election for this also, if that also failed.
So we are not going to talk about the town meeting date until we kind of get further tonight, until we get more discussion from other parties that would actually have to run the town meeting. Just so we
Thank
can
you.
get all the considerations on the table.
Thanks.
Roger?
Just to follow, maybe clarify something for Denise, and I think I'm right on this. So Denise, one of the things you were concerned about is that people won't necessarily have an explanation of what's going on. We can still do that at the town meeting in March, so there'll be, so people will have a thorough explanation, okay, already, in their minds. But the fact that then the election vote has to come before the town meeting vote shouldn't make a lot of difference, if that helps.
That's not gonna happen. It's still the town meeting. We have the annual town meeting in March, with the special town meeting in either late April, first week in March, then the town election all occurs close together, but you still put the special town meeting first. And then if that vote, that 2/3 vote fails, you could have another one within 120 days. Go ahead with the town election, hopefully get that passed. That's only a 50% vote, get that passed, and then do another town meeting to try to get your 2/3 vote for the actual project itself. Now, at the regular town meeting, don't be surprised if people don't bring up in the budget discussion the school project. I would think that they probably will. So we'll have to be
Okay.
ready to talk about something at the annual town meeting. But no, we're still talking about having a special town meeting first before the actual ballot vote.
All right, thanks.
Greg, I saw your hand was up at some point while Jim was talking. Did you still have a question?
Jim made a comment around the special education documents and the school effort in that. I just wanted to get a sense of, is that just going back and forth with MSBA on the design? I thought the ed plan already articulated special education delivery methodology, but I might be incorrect.
So there's definitely a piece of that, and I would kind of hand it over to Larry and Katie as far as exactly how that works, but it's more lining up the submittal for DESI to review. So Larry, Katie, anything to add on that?
Well, I was going to say, so what happens is the MSBA takes our package, and it's packaged separately from the rest of our report, and they review it very quickly, but then they send it to DESI. And DESI, essentially, this is their first chance to look at the project. And they will look at it, and they may have comments to us specifically related to the special education spaces. So part of that is essentially repackaging the ed plan in a way that it then goes to DESI. DESI reviews it, and they come back and they may have comments to us, or they may just say, looks fine. And the comments go back to the MSBA, and the MSBA hands them to us.
So I'm just trying to prepare the team and making sure we're prepared around what to expect. So in terms of the ed plan and the workload around the ed plan, and these sound like two different ed plan was a lot of work, and this is probably just getting some feedback from DESI and answering their questions and responding to any inquiries. Is that accurate?
Right. Yes, I'd say so. And what we can do is send you over a couple sample submissions so you guys can see
Perfect. Thank you.
the product. But I think it's more about taking what you already have and sort of condensing it and consolidating it to present it to DESI.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Okay.
Keep going.
So just to give a preview for the upcoming couple weeks. So we are confirmed, as I mentioned earlier, for the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee on the 25th. Arrow Street plans on meeting with the district to go over some more details for the schematic design. Coming up in October, we'll have the first Monday for the building committee. And again, it's that project delivery method discussion. That's an important discussion that we have to devote some time to. And then the MSBA board meeting at the end of October. So we continue this on through to the follow-on months. We can go into a bit more detail there in future meetings, but that's pretty much the preview over the next couple weeks. And then
So hang on, Jim. One full committee meeting in October, 2 full committee meetings in November.
correct. Yep. And I think we can also have the discussion of because the importance of these discussions, I do think in person will be beneficial. We don't have to decide that tonight, but I do think it would definitely be beneficial as we walk through some of these things, because this is ultimately your project. And we're, no longer looking at various options. We're, really designing what the building is going to be. And, that's an important discussion, obviously.
Kathy?
So Jim, on November 18th, you expect the Sustainability Subcommittee to come forth with a recommendation as far as whether to do the geothermal system or not, including what the cost would be, including what the federal grants might be, so that we understand what the net cost might be on November 18th?
So I'll defer to Arrow Street a little bit there, but I don't think we'll have as much information as we possibly can for that decision to be made. So Larry, Katie, any thoughts on that as far as exactly what would be put forth?
I think it's going to be one of several different meetings where we're reviewing the sustainability pieces that we're putting into the project and getting the sustainability committee to see it first, and then come to the full committee with it. We're not necessarily saying that that's the recommendation on the 18th, because I don't know, Jim, if you have the rest of the calendar, we're really looking to get the pricing set out in mid-January. And then what we would need is at that time an understanding of the building system. So we need that in advance. So this is probably a preliminary look at the system, and then probably in December, we'd be looking for a firm decision on it.
And we'd have the cost at that point?
Yes, we would have costs based on the estimate we've seen to date, as well as costs of the various tax incentives.
Roger?
Jason, I apologize for this. You're gonna see me try to join from my phone. I just want to give you a heads up, and when that happens, I'll drop off the desktop.
We may let you back in.
Yeah, I understand. And I may fail anyway.
All right, any other questions for Jim on where we're at so far? All right, Jim, keep going.
So
that-
that's it. We did include some details on Arrow Street's work plan. That's for information just to kind of walk through everything. But I think that gives a good taste of where we're heading over the next couple of months. So that's all we had for those updates.
Okay. All right, any other questions on where we're headed? Jim, I think it's really important that sooner rather than later, you and the Arrow Street team outline which meetings you're expecting or strongly recommend to be in person, just so people can properly plan. So I'm not asking for an answer right now, but if you can let me know. So
Definitely.
when we calendar this, we can let everyone know.
Okay.
The one item to consider is there is that first Monday in November is the day before election. So there's a no school, was it Greg? Yeah, there's school Monday, no school Tuesday. We can have a public meeting though, so just keeping that in mind.
Okay.
We can assess it as we go.
Makes sense.
All right, next item is design working group. So I've had a few conversations with Skanska about the potential formation of another subcommittee. Before anyone gets too uptight about that, given the number of subcommittees we already have, is in discussions, I learned that the design subcommittee in most other districts are primarily the educators that are sitting on the committee, but in those committees, they actually hold a vote, right? Is it just for everyone's benefit, right? Our ex officio members, the way we set up the charge, don't vote because they're not residents of the town. So that's to conform with our town bylaw. If they were residents of the town, we could have had a discussion about one or more of them based on their roles and titles within the district or the town, having a vote as actual members of the committee. But we didn't have that option to have the discussion. So most of these other districts form subcommittees, but it's mainly made up of educators and maybe potentially a member at large, et cetera. So what I would like to recommend is that we do not set up a working group, that Arrow Street meet with Greg and his team as they see fit on items that they need educational input on for purposes of their design. We can certainly designate one member of the committee to sit in on those meetings. But to be clear, that the expectation would be that decisions are not made in those meetings, but really options are discussed so that, you know, I'll call it an abbreviated version could be brought back to the committee of, you know, we have this option versus this option. This is the more educationally preferred option. But oh yeah, by the way, there may be a cost component to it or a design component to it or a complication in terms of timeline or any of the other things that go into how the Arrow Street team thinks about it in terms of design. So I wanted to make sure that's my recommendation is to not form a subcommittee and to just let Arrow Street meet with Greg and his team. And if we want to have someone join them, one party, so be it, but not to set up another subcommittee. So welcome thoughts or considerations from others. Kathy?
So, I agree with you. I don't think we should do another subcommittee. We're stretched pretty thin as we are. So right now we've got finance, communications, and sustainability. Is that it?
And we will have safety and security at some point.
Okay, because Jim used the term facilities a minute ago, and I assume he meant sustainability. Okay, so there's not a facilities subcommittee separately. So I think that you're right on, Jason, as far as recommending not to do a subcommittee. And then if we want to have a person designated, so be it.
Are there any other thoughts to the contrary on that approach?
Denise's hands up.
Oh, there it is. I'm trying to pull Roger back in. Go ahead, Denise.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because we are sort of stretched thin, shall we say? But if we need somebody, I'm willing to step in. If you need somebody.
We'll get there next in terms of who wants to do it, but I appreciate you stepping up. So does anyone want to form a subcommittee? Let's start there.
Oh.
Okay. So now Denise has raised her hand is willing to participate and listen in. Again, no decision should be made. They should be brought back to the committee, but obviously go into as much detail as you need to make some recommendations. Does anyone else interested in joining those meetings? All right. We'll take silence as everyone's good with Denise participating as her schedule allows, but obviously Arrow Street and Skanska team, feel free to coordinate directly with Greg as you need certain items. And we'll just add an update of where you're at. It'll be part of, I imagine, your normal progress reports to us anyways. Questions on that? Okay, meeting schedule, I think we've talked about enough tonight, so we'll meet the first Monday in October. I don't see a need for a meeting beforehand, and then maybe someone will send out an update on the MSBA's meeting and what happens next week, and if there's any updates. Any questions on the meeting schedule? Is there any other business for tonight? I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
There he is. He's back. Motion's been made and seconded. No further discussion. Roll call vote. Denise?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Roger?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
And I am I as well. 6-0. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.